you guys who are on here, I just wanted to give this man a proper introduction. This is Richard Taylor. He is an author, bestseller, advocate for mental health. He's a mental health champion. You know, I don't know if you guys have seen any of his works, but definitely, and like he's written 5 books, 6 including one of the translations in Spanish. And what better way?
Working on number 7 now.
We're working on number 7, man. I can say that I know like an author's author. You know what I'm saying? You know, so yeah, man.
Love it.
What better way for me to start this conversation off with a little excerpt from one of your books? Love Between My Scars. And this is it here. In that crying moment, my past pain lost its power. For 5 days straight, I woke up to watch the sun rise, and as it rose, I allowed my tears to fall. I thought it was weird, but by the time the weekend came, I felt like a new person. Yes, my eyes were dry as the Sahara, and I'm sure I looked sleepy, but I felt energized for the first time in a long time. That time of release broke down a few hidden walls inside of me. With each wall falling, I welcomed freedom and happiness inside of my life. I was able to genuinely smile when I came across people on campus and when I went to visit home. That was a piece from his book called Love Between Scars. And my reason why I picked that piece is because that highlighted some trauma that you had within your life. I'm unsure of what that trauma is, but as an African-American male in America, I believe that we have adapted to living a lifestyle of pain. And we have adapted to absorbing the norms, which shouldn't really be norms for any person in America, for any person in the world. Right. You know what I mean? So I would like to acknowledge some of those habits that we do subconsciously or consciously that promote that lifestyle of pain. And then what practices can we utilize for us to sort of dismantle that?
That's great. And so before we do this, let me just give a small precursor to what you read.
All right.
And so the Love Between My Scars piece is so important. I think even within this conversation, that was my 3rd book. So it wasn't just the title of the book itself, Love Between My Scars. It was actually a real life lived experience. So It was from that passage specifically was during a healing and transformation phase after my final suicide attempt. Now, mind you, by this time, I had been living with depression, anxiety, and had had suicide attempts between the age of 10 to 20. So you're talking about Richard at 20 with that final suicide attempt. That was actually what you were reading right there, because that last attempt, not only did it almost take my life, it was literally a buildup of, depression started for me when I was 10 because of being bullied because of my weight, right? Physical appearance that I couldn't change at the time, not realizing that it was a part of my physical growth. And then from there, it turned into words said, it turned into things done, it turned into people's, negative actions. It turned into traumas that I walked into, not really paying attention, seeking validation. These are all things that we as men do, right? As brothers, we do it. And like you said, sometimes we do it unconsciously, right? Like we're just going with the flow. Of course, last month was Men's Health Month, and you saw me talk about that whole man up concept, right? And so many times during the man up piece, we take in so much and we just suppress it, but never actually address it and deal with it. And so what you read, I think, is so profound because that was actually the end result of me coming to this place of like, I really got to figure out what it is to heal from all of these things that I had suppressed that had led me to this life of wanting to die.
Wow.
And so I think that it's important that you put that out there, because one of the things that I truly believe that we have is this beautiful opportunity to be able to acknowledge the habits that we have, and not only acknowledge them, but acknowledging their root causes, right? Like, what has led me to this space? what has pulled me and drawn me into this moment. And so I think that when we get to start doing that, that passage that you read was me really for the first time learning to be alone without feeling lonely,
Wow.
right? But with true reflection of self, because for so long I didn't want to be
Hmm.
alone because I hated being alone with my thoughts because I was suicidal. I hated being alone because for so long I needed validation, I needed comfort, I was yearning for warmth. So with that being the case, I noticed that my story is just one of many, but we all kind of have that in certain ways where there are certain things that we yearn for and that we need, whether through community in a big capacity or one-on-one relationships and
Hmm.
bonds that
Hmm.
we have. And I think that when we don't know how to approach it because we haven't addressed it in
Hmm.
here, what tends to happen is that we will continue to go with the wave and not
Hmm.
acknowledge it,
Hmm.
right? So we have habits that we haven't identified. We have habits that we haven't acknowledged. And then, of course, those habits over a longer period of time just turn into practices. And so, what tends to happen when you are just starting to go with the flow, you start to treat that dysfunction like it's
Hmm.
normal. And it really is a bad habit being practiced day
The
in and day
lies we
out.
tell ourselves.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Hmm. That's bro. I didn't. So
I knew I just threw a
yo,
lot at you in that, but I felt like I wanted to just bring some context to it real quick. I just
yo,
just real quick.
I didn't know, bro. I didn't know. And the whole just that what you just delivered to me was what to us is the definition of unmasked as the pure and the purest
Yeah,
example of unmasking the masculinity, because it's like from 10 to 20,
yeah,
those are like, as a young man, those are like golden years. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh
whether
yeah,
you learned how
yeah,
to
yeah,
backflip, whether you learned how to, play ball, play football, pee wee, you know what I mean? Like those are like pinnacle years in a child's, well, in a young man's upbringing. Um, and the
yep.
fact that you had, I don't know, man. I feel like the underlying thing in all of that is that you were here for this purpose so you can help the rest of us. You know what I'm saying? Like that trauma that you had to go through.
Right. That's what
You
it's
know what I
about.
mean? And your shirt kind of goes into my next question, as far as how did you, when that period was over at the end of what was you said from 10 to 20, right?
Yep. So 2000 and so from 98 to
Okay.
2008.
So at what point throughout that journey did purpose come into play?
So it's funny that you asked that question, honestly, because and I tell people this a lot. For me, one of the things that I struggled with the most was this idea of purpose, right? Like, what does purpose mean? What is it? And so I think because of the seeking of validation, because of the feeling like I was never enough, I was one of those people that honestly felt like I lacked purpose, right? And so it didn't just start off as full-on suicide attempts. It actually started off as cutting. And we talk about children and even teens and young adults, man. We are so impressionable, and sometimes our ideas can be so far out there. So for me, this started off as cutting, thinking that it would help me to lose weight because I'm trying to cut fat off of my
Mm.
body. Over the next year or so, it transitioned into this space of now I'm utilizing it to balance out the emotional and mental pain that I'm feeling, and physically inflicting pain on myself is helping to keep that balance. And then from there, over the next year, that's when it transpired into this thing of like, I feel hopeless. I don't have a purpose. I'm a waste of space. I'm a mistake. All of these different
Mhm.
ideologies and thoughts that we have sometimes. And so I struggled with purpose for the longest time because of that alone. Simply put, man, many of us, when it comes to our lives, right, we're trying to figure out what it is that we're put on this earth for and what we're supposed to be doing. And so for me, it wasn't until after that final suicide attempt that it happened. And I'm laughing as I'm saying that because I'm thinking about what the doctor said to me once he was stitching up my arm. He was like, "You tapped the main vein at the top of your wrist." He was like, "But no blood would come out." He was like, "It's obvious you got a purpose in life and you need to figure out what it
Wow.
is." His words, didn't know this man
Wow.
from Adam, to me. And in that moment, I thought it was really interesting because I'm like, he's talking to me about a purpose, not knowing that this is the very thing that I've been battling with for
Mm-hmm.
years, right? I thought my purpose early on was going to be me in the NFL because I was a standout
Mm-hmm.
football player right before I had this
Mm-hmm.
heart condition. Then I thought it was going to be me being the next Chris Brown because I got the vocals to go like, and so everything that didn't happen, I was aligning purpose with the wrong things, not realizing that purpose wouldn't be about me and what I could gain for myself. And I want whoever is on here to catch this. Purpose was so much bigger. It was literally those lived experiences that many of us don't think we're going to come out of, that we're able to take and they become a story and a testament that can really start to reach somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it leads us, and you and I had a conversation about this off air a few
Mm-hmm.
weeks ago, but it leads us into the reality that our lives are bigger than our
Yeah.
own,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, purpose started coming in when I realized that what I was going through was actually needed for me to be able to really walk in a space of power to go through
Mm-hmm.
something that somebody else might not be able to fully
Mm-hmm.
live through, but because they have your
Mm-hmm.
voice, because their ears are attentive to what your heart has
Mm-hmm.
to say, essentially what it does is it reaches them in their lowest place. It reaches them in that dark point, and you give them, and I don't want to say this self-righteously, but you're saving their life
Correct.
to a degree when it comes to giving them something greater, when it pertains to their life, their future, finding their true self and being able to walk in that for the betterment of themselves and those around them.
When you were in that space, actually, I don't want, and you know what? It's crazy because I've never had a conversation with somebody who has attempted suicide, and this
Wow.
is
Okay.
like I have 1,000 questions. Like, how does it feel? Like,
Ask away,
like
bro. I'm an
when
open book.
just like, amongst those 1,000 questions, bro, how does that feel when you cut? Like, does that give like a feeling of like whatever, or like more so like, all right, well, in that outside of that moment, when you started to become knowledgeable of what it is that you're going through, like, how did you know to confront it? You know what I'm saying? Like, what was that thing to be like, yo, this shit ain't right, bro. It ain't. But at the same time, it's like, like we have multiple things like that within our lives on a smaller scale. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not eating right. I'm not working
Yeah.
out right. I shouldn't be chilling with this girl. I have a girlfriend. I
Mm-hmm.
have,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
the case may be. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to that, it's like, yo, it's like, when did when was that moment of confronting this reality of this is who I am and this is what I'm doing? And the second part of that is, after you confronted that, what was some of the biggest lessons that you've learned about yourself?
That's a great question. I know our time is limited, so I'm gonna try and blaze through this. I think for the first question, as far as knowing that it wasn't right, I knew early on it wasn't right, and I think I came to that conclusion simply because every time I did it, it was one of those things where I had to hurry up and cover it up. Definitely when I was younger, right? You talk about like trying to clean up the
Mm-hmm.
evidence and all the mess so my parents wouldn't see anything, so they wouldn't ask any questions or whatever the case might be. But then I think as I got older too, I knew it wasn't right in those moments, but I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really fighting it then. I wasn't really fighting that this isn't right in that space. It was more of a thing of like, man, like even though it's not right, I think I was just so caught up and so down in all of the things that I was dealing with personally from the depression. You talked about not eating right during this time of living through this depression. Definitely when I got to that 2 years in college, I went from 200 pounds to 370 pounds. So I'm
Wow.
dealing with bad physical health now as well along with the mental health issues. And so even though I knew it wasn't right, it was just like I felt like I was so deep
Uh-huh.
in that
Uh-huh.
I couldn't get out. Right. And so I think I was just graced with chance after chance. And that final suicide attempt was really the moment where it was like, wow, bro, not only is this not right, but if you've been given so many chances, you need to start paying attention and start asking the greater question of why do I still have so many chances? Is my purpose greater? And maybe I just
Hmm.
haven't
Hmm.
tapped into it yet. Right. And so that was a big piece for me. And then to the second question you asked, what was it again? Just want to make sure I'm hitting that one right.
Um, what were some of the biggest lessons that you've learned once you confronted it? The biggest lessons that you've learned about yourself.
Oh, so that was great. So I realized that for a long period of time, I was believing lies about myself. I hadn't checked. That's the thing. When you talk about dealing with anxiety, depression, these ideas and thoughts of suicide, or maybe even the actions, man, for me, I was allowing every thought to kind of just run free in my mind, and I let it sit in my heart as if it was
Hmm.
truth, even though it wasn't.
Hmm.
And I think this is us in life in general. No matter what we go through, a lot of times when we're hit with something, a traumatic experience or moment, circumstance, it doesn't matter. What we tend to find is that a lot of times when we're hit, we either speak the problem so highly, we give it so much power that we have put it on this pedestal that makes us feel like, man, like there's
Correct.
nothing I can do to combat this. There's nothing I can do to change it. And so for me, the first thing I learned was that I had relinquished my power over to something that
Hmm.
didn't deserve it in the first place. Right. So it was this internal battle of like taking power back over. Right. So I'm a huge superhero and like comic book fan, man. So I don't know if you've ever seen the
Yes.
Black Lightning TV show. But there's a character on there, Khalil. Khalil had a huge battle within himself when it came to like he's literally fighting, you know, his internal demons. He's fighting this hard part of himself that wants to take over and become this like
Uh-huh.
massive mercenary. And then he has the side of him that does love people and that does care. And it's like that for many of us. And that was me. That was the first thing that I learned was that I'm literally fighting against myself when it comes to I've allowed problems to create parts of my heart and homes in
Wow.
my heart that it doesn't deserve. The second thing that I learned, man, was that I think through that process, it shifted me over into the space of learning how to love myself, right? And so I think that this is really important because you asked this question, how do I find love
Yeah. Yeah.
between my
Yeah. Yeah.
scars? I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
when we talked about the questions and going over things, I learned how to heal. I learned how to heal, which meant that there were some people I had to forgive. I had to forgive myself because there were some things that I walked into, right? Many times we can easily just say I was the
Hmm.
victim of X, Y, and Z, but don't always look at the moments where we say, hey, even though I was a victim from the outcome, what did I do leading up to this that led me here? Because sometimes it's not a moment of trauma that we couldn't control. It was something that we actively got into, thinking that it was just going to be the same
Correct.
like it was before. And so learning that, man, there were some distractions and temptations that I was willingly letting in and allowing myself to be lured into. And that led me into that space of being able to heal when it came to forgiving people, forgiving myself. Man, a big part of it was understanding that I could not go back
Uh
and
huh.
change what took place. And I think that was a huge part of the resentment that I was holding for a long time was that I wanted people to come back and apologize. I wanted the situation to be different. And I'm like, Richard, that's not reality, bro. Like at the end of the day, this is what happened. And I posted this several times, and I'll put it in here as we get ready to wrap this up. Right? Listen, the trauma might not be your fault, but your healing is
Correct.
your responsibility. And that has been the big thing that I have learned and has started to really shape the healing process for me is that if I plan to heal, it's my responsibility, which means that I've got to be
Hmm.
realistic about what can happen, what can't happen, and how I choose to move within these different spaces, man. And then I think I would top it off by saying the last thing that I learned, man, was that self love piece. How to truly love me, the good, the bad, the
Hmm.
ugly, and the indifferent. Understanding that as I go through this process of healing, as we all go through this process of healing, we're going to
Hmm.
be peeling back layers. Sometimes when we're peeling back our layers, we're going to feel problematic. We're going to feel like, oh, I'm too much of of an issue to save. I get too much baggage, and the reality is that that's not the case. Excuse me, that's not the case. But you've got to be able to peel those layers back. You've got to go through and understand that each one of those layers being peeled is a lesson behind it that is going to not only be able to help you, but to help somebody else. And in that, down in the center, as you peel back those layers, you find the space and the part that allows you to love the holistic side of you, the holistic part of you that is, yo, I got my bad days. Sometimes I can be toxic. I'm this, I'm that. But at the end of the day, I'm a work in progress that refuses to give up.
Hey, I hope y'all taking notes. Okay.
I tried.
Hey, you good, brother? You good? You good, man? That's hey, man. This is yo. It was man, yo. This is gratifying for me. This is uplifting, man. I'm glad that you touched on the healing aspect because at the end of the day, you know, through so many facets of our lives of being men in America, we are told that, you know, a lot of the work needs to, well, we're not told. We push a lot of the work that needs to get done on other people because of the reality of our situation, the reality of our upbringing, which is definitely not saying don't acknowledge that, but a lot of the work that we need as a culture needs to come from within us. You know what I mean? But there's a learning curve with that because of the reality of, all right, cool, we've pushed you down here. Now we're starting to bubble up. We still got to go through all of these trials and tribulations and physical roadblocks at the same time. But that last sentence that you said is acknowledging it. I don't remember verbatim what you said, but basically what I took away from it was it's a fight every day. Every single day. It's a journey. It's a long push-up. You know what I'm saying? You still got to come back up. You feel what I'm saying, man? Yo, Richard, man, I want to thank you so much for your time, for your energy, man, for your knowledge, for your wisdom, for taking the mask off, for learning that you had a mask on. You know what I'm saying? And then revealing that, man. Thank you for sharing your story, man, and your energy. If you guys want to contact Richard, his Instagram is richard.taylor jr. I believe your website is richardtaylorjr.com if you want to purchase any of his books. He has 5 books out, one translated in Spanish, and he's working on his 7th right now. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Taylor, man, thank you.
Hey, blessings, fam. Much love to you, man. Thank you for putting this on, man. I definitely love what you guys are doing, and man, I wish we had more.
Oh yeah, definitely. We definitely coming back with this Unmasked Summit, man.
Shout out to Bro Marcus.
Definitely, man. All right, my brother. I'll talk to you soon.